We've got our significance and engagement policy workshop. So before we get underway and I hand over to Sam and Ashton, I'd ask Councillor Maxwell if he could just open us with a karakia, please.
Ka pai, kia ora tātou, anei tō tātou karakia whakatuwhera. Kia iri tātou. Tukua te wairua ke rereki nā taumata hei arahi I a tātou mai katoa. E tā tātou whaina tika nā rātou mā, kia mau, kia kaha, kia kurai anaro, kia pūpuri, kia pakamaua, kia tīna. Tīna, haumie, huie, tāe ki e.
Kia ora, Councillor Temera Benfield/Maxwell. I'm going to hand over now to Sam and Ashton. There is a presentation in Stella. Just so you know, it's not under the LTP folder, it's in the separate folder by itself. So it's right down the bottom or at the end of your bookshelf if you're looking for it online in Stella. Councillors. Sam, we're in your hands.
Sure. Thank you. Kia ora everyone. And so this is, as it says on the title, the Significance and Engagement Policy Workshop. And so while this forms part of the LTP, it's not technically part of the LTP, but it's important that we discuss this and get a direction from Council on this before doing more of the preparation on LTP. And this is one of the things, as you will have seen if you've looked at the slides, that if we determine, or if you determine, that we consult on this, this will need to be consulted on before we go out for the significant part of the long-term plan, and so that's the reason why we're bringing it to you today. So really we're seeking a direction on the level of review of the significance and engagement policy that you would like to take. And I've got Ashton here with me because he's the policy expert who knows it like the back of his hand, so if you've got specific questions about the policy, Ashton's here to answer those, and hopefully I can. Actually, probably then there's no other questions, is there? But if there's any other questions, I'll look to answer those. So why are we discussing this? So the Significance and Engagement Policy is a statutory requirement under the Local Government Act, and so it determines how Council assesses the significance and determines the level of community engagement or consultation that's required. And so councils are asked to regularly review whether the policy should be retained or reviewed, and so that's why we're doing that ahead of the LTP. So the key policy features are all up there, and so I won't read them verbatim because I'm sure can all read, but contains a range of criteria which are in the next slide that help council assess the potential impact of a decision and determine the appropriate level of community engagement. Probably one point to note is that around using IAP2 to select the right level of engagement. So that might be a term that not everyone's necessarily heard of before. And so IAP2 is the International Association for Public Participation. So that's the P2s from Public and Participation. So it's a globally recognised community engagement framework that helps organisations choose the appropriate level of public participation. So that ranges from informing through to consultation and through to involving, collaborating and empowering decisions in communities and decision making. And so that's the framework we use around all our engagement and also underpins our significance and engagement policy as well. So just thought I'd highlight that in case IAP2 seems like a very council speak thing. So there are currently 9 significant assessment criteria. So again, I won't go through those criteria by criteria, but essentially they're there so that you understand those that we have. So now we'll jump on to what are our options, and so what is the direction that we're seeking from you before we bring it to council. So option 1 is a minimal change to the policy. So what that involves is retaining the current framework, and we can make minor updates. So that would be wording changes that we need to make that might be around how we implement the policy as opposed to this policy itself. So it maintains that framework with minimal disruption. So if we do that, obviously the considerations are that there's limited opportunity to consider the policy or make it better. And if we were to do anything substantive, that would likely result in the need for consultation. Option 2 is a targeted review. So that's reviewing key elements that you decide that we should be looking at. And so we can have selected areas review, so that would strengthen it. So in terms of this, and there's the next slide kind of talks about the work required. So that requires a bit more staff work than option 1, and probably more importantly will require consultation with the community. Option 3 is a comprehensive review, and so like it says, that would be reviewing it all. That requires even more staff work, but probably a similar level of consultation with the community, but it needs to be consultation rather than engagement, so we'd have to ensure that it meets those consultation requirements. So the green is, it's actually, you can probably see it on your one, all right. So I guess that just sets out loosely what I've said below. So for a minimal, all of those are low. For a targeted, the time required, staff resource and opportunity to change is moderate, and the consultation implication in terms of the fact that we would need to consult is high, but basically I think the bottom line is really a yes or a no. Minimal, unlikely to need to consult. Targeted and comprehensive, we would need to consult. So really, I'll open it up after this for any, well, it's a workshop, so it's just any workshop discussion. So seeking direction on whether we want a minimal change, a targeted review, or a comprehensive review. If I just probably actually jump to some of the supporting information. So in terms of we looked at the number of criteria, and I say we, it was Ashton primarily, is that other councils use. And so as you can see, we're kind of in the band of where 29 of the 42 councils sit in terms of either having between 5 and 9 criteria. As you can see, we're right on the edge, about to slide away in terms of the number that we have. And probably this, again, is quite similar. So where we sit in comparison to others, both in terms of the significance criteria and the non-engagement reasons, a little bit lower. So just that's there in your packs. Just I thought I'd highlight that to understand. It's always important to understand where we sit with others. But yes, so now I'll open it up to any questions, or actually it's really a discussion for all of you. Yes.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions, if I may, from me. While this particular policy has been in place, have you seen situations where we've measured something in a particular way on significance and engagement, and it's been interpreted in the community in a very different way, where they basically, we've said it's here, but they've thought it was here? So I'm just wondering if this policy is aligning with what is happening in the community and what their thoughts are, and if I'm saying this just because, in my opinion, minimal change would be ideal, but if we're having a lot of situations where the community is seeing things very differently than the way that we're measuring them, then we might need to change.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So and Ashton's welcome to correct me, or the Chief Executive's welcome to correct me, not from my understanding. So I think that there will always be those cases where the community thinks that we don't consult enough and those types of things, but in my opinion, it's not around the policy that we have. It would probably be decisions that we make generally, and in my view, the 9 that we have probably cover all the aspects that our community does talk to us about as seeing as important, and would have been in the process the last time. So yes, that's a very long answer of nothing to me sticks out as something that should be in there or shouldn't be in there, where we've had real friction with our community, that we didn't consult on it or we did consult on it because of the policy. And ultimately, those decisions around consultation and things always come back to the chamber anyway. And so there's the opportunity to discuss that as well. So did you have a point?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, because I think what you're trying to ask is, has the policy helped us read well when something lands with the community, and have we read well the level of significance they attach to it in your decision making? So I think that's exactly the question we're trying to answer, and I think it's potentially, if I think back in my time of where we've had a reaction from the community that's not anticipated, I don't recall, but I think it's worth for us going back and confirming this. They haven't been on decisions you've made, but they have been on matters. So if I think about what's top of mind now is Princess Gate Arches, and that wasn't a decision of council that the public were really interested in, but it was a consequence. And so I wonder whether actually what we're trying to address is not so much your significance and engagement policy, but actually how that policy is applied in operational decisions that we then need to bring back to the chamber more with more sensitivity, rather than how your decisions are. So I think it's possibly application of the policy rather than policy wording. The one thing about policy wording I might suggest is the financial thresholds, and I don't know if the CFO's got a comment here, but the financial thresholds for a public consultation, I think, are reasonably low given the scale of this organisation. And if you wanted to participate in an investment, for example, that came to council that was off scale that would generate alternative revenue or other things like that, I think your financial thresholds are pretty low. And so you'd be out consulting if you wanted to do that, and then that probably means that because of commercial sensitivity, you're probably giving away that opportunity. So, I mean, that's the one from a policy wording you might want to consider. I don't know if the CFO's got a view. But I think the first part of the question we probably owe you a response on, which needs a little bit more work on. So.
If I can provide a comment on the financial threshold. So and I'm going to kind of get in the weeds on the policy here for a little bit. The way that we assess significance is through a general criteria assessment, where you look at all 9, and if 2 or more, it gives an indication if it's high and if engagement should be required. The current financial threshold is only tied to 1 or maybe 2 of those significance criteria. Some other councils have a multi-limb test, or basically, if we go over this dollar amount, it's probably significant, and so we should engage. And then you have the assessment on the other side. So there's kind of a 2-part test. Whereas our financial threshold is just baked into our general criteria assessment. So for example, Thames Corp Mandel, they assess that first, and then they go through the criteria. So there's other ways of doing that threshold. And then, for example, if we want to increase it, that might be one of the things that could be part of a targeted review or part of a minimal review. But if we change that threshold, that could indicate consultation may be required.
Thank you. If I may, just one further question, and Andrew sort of stole my thunder on this one. But it was more around, if we did go with minimal change, what sort of operational things do you think we could implement to make this work better moving forward? And I just, I haven't been here long enough to know this, but just that sort of, obviously a lot of this sits on a scale, and we're going to have multiple opinions on where on the scale that sits, and just how do we potentially work through those differences of opinion when I think something is significant, it's borderline, and staff doesn't. How do we manage those situations?
Yeah, I think the point that Andrew made was a good one about how we use that as staff, but I think also the opportunity exists, of getting better clarity around how we apply that, and I probably liken it to similar to the work that was done in Head Start in terms of understanding that risk tolerance. It's probably understanding significance and engagement tolerance, to kind of bastardise the term a little bit, but understand from the collective group where you all sit. And I think then that can really help support the teams when they're making these decisions of what to bring up and what to talk about. I think could be a potentially good opportunity if we went for that minimal change, because I agree, in my mind, that minimal change space is about how we work with all of you, particularly with the lens of the long-term plan, but with other things, to understand how we reflect your views a little bit better in things that go out or come up, or don't go out or don't come up. I think is a good suggestion.
I'm just going to ask Andrew just to give a couple of comments. Just
Yes.
Given the example that he just used, as I understood it, the Princess Gate was an operational decision based on health and safety, and so, as I understand it, we wouldn't normally consult or engage the community on a health and safety issue. And also, as I understand it, if you could just please confirm, this policy is around decision making. It's how council, the threshold that councillors or the council needs to meet, whether it decides to engage or consult, as opposed to the CE making an operational decision. I think if we just clear up that distinction first, because I think otherwise we're just going to get ourselves a little bit confused.
Yeah, I can answer that, Madam Chair. That you're exactly right. I was just drawing a parallel to try and understand where Councillor Sandford was going. So, absolutely, what's happening with Princess Gate Arch is not a decision of council. The significance and engagement policy wouldn't have applied in any case. It was a kind of health and safety driven decision, which is operational. So that's accepted. The parallel I was trying to draw is that's an example of where potentially we need to understand the calibration of the community sensitivity. So it's not about the significance and engagement policy, but more about how we apply, what comms treatment, engagement treatments we apply to some of those decisions, which don't come through the chamber, but still impact the community.
And I think to probably just to add on to that, in terms of the policy also helps provide a filter for understanding at early stages what things might need, so that can lead into a council decision, but the types of things that we would need to consider early are often governed or viewed through the lens of the significance and engagement policy before deciding what approach to start taking on something.
Okay, I think, David, did you have your hand up? Did you wish to make a comment as well, as a CFO?
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, just to add to Andrew's and Ms. Morrison and Ms. Morrison's point before, there are a number of criteria in the significance and engagement policy that specifically capture lower value projects. If we were to look at purely the financial threshold, I think it's fair to say it hasn't been adjusted for inflation for quite a number of years. And I agree that if we were looking at this as a standalone threshold, I agree it is probably due for a refinement compared to if you're considering where inflation has been since that was put in place in the last policy.
Thank you. Councillor Timra Benfeld.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So just to clarify your last group of statements, so option one is primarily, I suppose, an internally facing option, and then option two is identifying who are the most affected groups by a particular decision and working a bit more closely with them, as opposed to just being a more internally focused views of council type thing. Is that right?
So probably minimal change would be, I suppose, technical changes or the way that we implement it. A targeted review would be targeted parts of the policy, so it wouldn't be targeted who we consult with. It would be consulting with everyone, but in terms of targeted review, it would be targeting specific parts. So if it was the financial threshold plus the whatever, those parts, and then option three would be reviewing the entire policy to get a kind of best case scenario for our council. So in terms of options 2 and 3, the consultation would be broad public consultation as opposed to, I guess the targeted is the word was that we often use targeted consultation, but for 2 and 3, neither of those would be targeted, they'd just be broad consultation.
Sorry, just a question regarding that. So is that based on practice or policy? I mean, in terms of that broad consultation.
So when we go out for consultation, just like we would with any other document that we would consult on, even though we're consulting due to the changes of the document, what we're actually talking about with the community is the issues that are facing them. So for example, if we make a change to the criteria, I'm just going to use one of those examples of changes to levels of service. If we didn't want to consider that anymore, we would go out to the community to talk to them. Is levels of service still important to you? Do you want that removed? Do you want to keep it in? Those are the types of issues that we'd be talking about, is the substance that we'd be talking with the community. And then that obviously flows down into the decision making, because this policy refers to every decision that's put in front of you. There's a significance and engagement test. And that flows through the rest of the decisions that would happen as part of that LTP, that cycle.
Okay. Can you tell me when this policy was last reviewed? It doesn't say in the date off the top of the policy.
Yep. So the policy was reviewed last LTP cycle. So there was some moderate changes that were done. And so it's been reviewed as part of every LTP cycle. So in 2021, they chose to not change the policy in a substantive way. So there was not consultation as part of the 2021 LTP cycle, but there was modifications as part of the last LTP cycle.
Okay, just comment from me then. So subject to what I think Councillor Sandfield was asking is, has there been an instance where this policy is broken or hasn't worked? And I can't think of any off the top of my head at this stage, but if we are to make some changes to this, if we go with options 2 or 3, you're saying that will require community consultation as part of this LTP alongside all the other decisions that we'll be consulting on?
It would need to go before the LTP, and so that's why we've brought it before. So the significance engagement policy determines the way that the types of things that we engage or consult on as part of the LTP, and so councils generally bring these forward first so that our community can have a say on the way that they are consulted in the long-term plan.
So just a question around that.
Yep.
We've also got consultation coming pre-LTP on the local waters done well.
Yes.
And then it would be follow-on LTP consultation, sort of, recovered water as well. So just trying to understand what's the timeline of, when all of these community consultation engagement pieces will land, and if we actually end up doing a disservice to our community because they kind of get consultation fatigue. And the most important one, I think, at this stage for me would be around the LTP rather than, not just the LTP, but
the LTP
if you were to do
package.
a level of sort of importance in terms of significance and engagement policy, and then those other 2 waters ones in the LTP, my focus, I think I'd prefer to focus on the more big ticket, big strategic items, but I don't know, that's just a comment from me. I don't know if anyone else has one. I see Councillor Lee, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And Andrew made a helpful reference to the Prince's Arches as an example of community expectations perhaps being different, and we've covered that one well, so we can put that to one side. A couple of other issues that spring to my mind, and I was wondering if council staff might be able to talk to us about how these issues relate, if at all, to the significance and engagement policy. But we did make a decision last year to move the night market to Kuria Park, and also there was the issue of redundancies at the nursery that caused a wee bit of a stir in the community as well.
I can talk about some aspects of those things, Councillor Lee, through you, Madam Chair? So if we talk about the night market...
Sorry, Andrew, could we... I don't want to get too far off what the purpose of this workshop is about, so if we can just keep the answers so that don't delve too much into the detail, but maybe if you just use them as examples of how this policy may or may not have worked, rather than actually getting right into the details.
That was my intention.
Thank you.
So if we talk about the night market, again, that we wouldn't have applied this policy lens to it because the trial was seeking to achieve two things that were operational in nature. When we brought back the substantive decision on the night market, then this policy would apply. So I just want to make that distinction. The second part was about the nursery, and again, the nursery, as was referred to earlier, we applied the levels of service lens to it. In the council's annual plan, the provision of nursery supplies was not explicitly noted as a service we were committing the community to providing, and therefore changing it was deemed to not be significant. So again, that policy was applied to inform how we acted. So absolutely both of those topics you raised would see this policy at work. Again, if you want to, you can tighten up on the criteria on the policy to say any change to what we provide, even if we haven't committed to providing it, that would be more of a constraint. Whereas if you left it as is, we would only look at what we've committed through our formal documents, annual plan, long-term plan, and assess those committed services when we consider level of service changes. So,
okay, thank you.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just with respect to the CFO's comments around the lack of review of the financial aspect or adjustment for CPI, if we chose to make that one of the few things we did look at, would that still require consultation, or is it purely, it's obvious that it's an adjustment that needs to happen?
So the way that the Local Government Act it creates the consultation requirement around this is that if we have known community views associated with the issue, we can apply a test to see if we actually have those views known, and so therefore we don't need to consult. The more changes we make, the more difficulty or evidentiary burden there is. So, for example, we could look at potentially increasing that, and then we'd have to provide what information we have from the community that represents that the increase in financial threshold is in line with their views that we currently have. So that's a very technical answer of it. The more we raise that threshold and the higher we make it, we have to have the evidence in hand to say we know the community thinks that for projects that are of a low cost that they don't care about that. And it's only about things that are really expensive. So that's sort of the general test.
If I can add to that, and I think we need to probably put our heads together to give you a comprehensive answer on that one, because I can see a scenario in which if we take a clear CPI adjustment basis to reviewing those thresholds since they were last adopted or since they were last consulted on, I can see that as being potentially not as significant as if we were making larger changes that deviated from that general rule. So I think maybe we'll consider that and give you some options.
That was kind of my question really, was if we keep it, the thresholds kind of the same, but adjust them all to CPI. It's just I would think minimal impact and maybe not necessarily needs that consultation, but that's just my view.
Sorry, are you sort of suggesting that it'd be minimal change, but just with those CPI?
That's what I would be looking at, yeah.
And I see a nod over there from Councillor Sanford. Councillor Brown,
I agree. I think that's a perfect example of what we should tweak, but while I might be personally frustrated by sometimes this, when we can't change our gardens without consultation, I don't think it's broken, so I'd be happy to go with minimal changes.
Are there any other questions, comments? There seems to be quite a few nods around the room to perhaps looking at option one around minimal change. Thank you. Councillor Temera Benfell's also signalling that. Councillor Wang, yes. I don't know. Councillor Okawatate and Councillor Lee online. Have you got any other differing opinion? Otherwise, there seems to be a consensus in the room for minimal change option 1, but maybe with those slight tweaks around the inflation adjustments. Councillor Okawatate? Yep, you've got a thumbs up. Councillor Lee? Thumbs up too?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I cast my mind back to the moving of the night market, that does strike me as something that did ruffle the feathers of the community with some pretty significant consequences. I wouldn't mind a targeted review insofar as exploring how that could be tightened up a little.
Councillor Lee, I don't know about my memory, but I think we had that as part of the discussion around the annual plan numbers, and we directed our CE to go and look at finding us savings. But I think there's a general consensus in the room that it's option 1. So I think, unless there's any other questions on this, I think we've given enough direction to the staff, and I think we can close this workshop on the significance and engagement policy and move to the next workshop on the property disposal strategy. So thank you very much, Sam and Ashton, and thank you, councillors, for that. We'll just take a minute to change PowerPoints and for you to get to the right part of Stella. Oh, sorry, and we're just going to switch the live stream over too, so do councillors need to join again? Okay. Sorry, councillors, we'll just wait till we just change the live Zoom over for the next workshop. So, councillors, if you just want to bring it up in your Stella, this is in the folder.